Hello and welcome to today's introduction to using Discus DISC Profiling within interviewing. My name's John Belchamber, and over the next few minutes I'm going to be taking you through some information on Discus and how to use it in interviews. So what are we going to look at? To start off with, I'll just go over a quick introduction to Discus DISC Profiling and its use in interviews or recruitment. We'll then recap on the Discus style card factors. For those of you that have joined me on these videos before, you may be familiar with this part, but it's good to recap before we move on to the next section, where we'll look at each style in turn, or the four key styles, how to respond with them in an interview situation, and I'll give you some sample questions to give you an idea of the sorts of things you might want to ask them. So Discus DISC Profiling. DISC was developed back in the 50s by William Bolton Marsden, who also created Wonder Woman and the lie detector test. Axiom Software, the makers of Discus, launched in 1994, and then in 1995 they were the first people to put Discus online. Discus itself has been an online profiling tool, probably one of the first in the world. Discus provides you with an opportunity to get accurate profiling of people in a quick and affordable way, and it will profile jobs, teams, individuals, sales prospects, various other styles, but that's all for another video. So what does Discus contain? Well, we have the individual profiling, which looks at preferred working behaviours and how someone is adapting their behaviour in their current working environment. Commonly known as a DISC profile. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to complete online using Discus Online. We also provide job profiling so that you can take a particular role within your organisation and really understand the behavioural requirements of the role. The Financial Times once said we hire people for their technical skills and we fire them for their behaviour. And so by using a job profile and matching that to your candidate's preferred behavioural style goes a long way to helping us minimise mistakes within the behavioural aspect of recruitment. We don't just look at jobs and individuals though. Once you've found an ideal candidate, we can profile a team and look at how does a team behave as a whole, how does the leader impact on the team, and how should the leader adjust their style to suit leading that team more effectively. Within that, we also can do relationship reporting, where you can look at two people and it'll report on how each person will get along with each other and obviously how to adjust their style to better work together. And then last but not least, we also have a profile called the perspective profile, which is useful if you can't get someone to complete a profile, but you've dealt with them and you answer some questions about what behaviours you've seen. And that will give you a likely profile of that individual. That tool is also available, by the way, as an iPhone or iPad app. Very useful for salespeople. It's called Discus Approach, which allows them to just answer 6 questions about a prospect they've met with, and it'll give them an understanding of their behavioural style and how best to negotiate with them, etc. But again, that's for another video, although some of you may have seen my video on how to use the style card in sales negotiations already. So looking at DISC in recruitment, basically what we do is we take the candidate and profile them. As I said, it takes about 15 minutes to produce online. Questionnaires are available in different languages, as indeed are the reports. And we also profile the job, so we understand what behavioural attributes we're looking for in this role. And then Discus will compare the two and tell us, okay, well, of our given candidates, who is the best match? So we can quickly compare candidate against a role. We can get a percentage behavioural matched and likely areas for development, because you're not always going to find someone that is 100% match. And then within the full Discus report, it provides some questions to ask during interviews. And today I'm going to give you a few samples of that type of question that you might be able to use. So before we move on, let's just recap on DISC characteristics for those of you that aren't 100% up to speed on that. DISC stands for Dominance, Influence, Steadiness and Compliance. Although as we go into today's session, I'll start using the style card terms, but I'll let you know which one they compare to. When we're talking about a D, a high D, we're talking someone with a high level of dominance in their profile. That type of person is all about power. So they like to be in charge. They set themselves goals. They like to achieve goals and to win. They fear failure. So the biggest fear for them is failing to achieve their goals. So as you see, they're motivated by that goal achievement. The low D, however, the opposite of the high D, dislikes responsibility, and they tend to prefer to be in a team environment. The influence, high I, all about people. They're motivated by recognition and being seen for being good at what they do and who they are and who they know, etc. And their biggest fear is, in fact, rejection. So that, everything they do is focused on people. Whereas the low I prefers not to get too involved and tends to gravitate towards roles that allow them to specialise quite a bit. A high S, steadiness, all about pace. And they actually motivated by security. So high S is about pace and about looks to be in an environment that is secure, because their biggest fear is insecurity. And that is both physical insecurity, but also, for example, job insecurity. You're not likely to find a high S in a role where they're on a commission-only type of structure. The low S very much dislikes boredom. They must have variety in their life. They don't like to sit down and do the same thing over and over again. So in a job environment, they're always going to be looking for roles where there is a lot of variety and they get to juggle lots of balls in the air at the same time. And then finally, the high compliance, high C. High C is all about policy. And they're motivated by having rules about. They're somewhat of a perfectionist. And their fear is trouble, so they don't like a lot of conflict. So they're not. Preference is not to be in a role where there is a lot of conflict. Whereas the low C, control and independence. They like to be independent. They don't want to be controlled. Unlike the high C that likes a rule book, the low C tends to throw it out the window and does things in their own way. So moving on to the style card. The style card, if you haven't come across it before, is a way of talking about DISC in a more simple way. In the report, the Discus reports, the style card comes in a grid there, as you'll see, with the different colours. And the four main areas are the red for the driver, which relates to dominance, the yellow for the communicator, which relates to influence, and the green for the planner, which relates to steadiness, and the blue for the analyst, relating to compliance. But looking at the driver, as I said, relating to dominance, describes someone who's very direct, demanding, the type of person that's really motivated to succeed and competitive in their dealings with other people. They focus in on facts rather than feelings, and they're very assertive and direct in their approach, so they're always going to be taking action. The communicator, or the high I, this is the communicative and sociable person, as the name suggests. They're very friendly and outgoing with other people, and they feel at ease in strange company. Unlike the driver, they do make their decisions based on how people will feel about a decision, but like the driver, they're very assertive, so they'll always be taking action. They're unlikely to sit still for too long. Next is our planner, which relates to the steadiness factor. And this describes people who are patient and persistent, don't like a lot of change. Remember, they like security, and they like to take time to plan things out carefully before acting. Similar to the communicator, they do make their decisions based around people and how people will feel about a decision. And they're very good listeners, but they tend to like to consider what they're going to do, taking their environment and plan things before they take any action. And then moving on, last but not least, our analyst, which relates to the compliance factor. And this describes someone that's very structured and organised. They will follow the rules whenever they can and are interested in dotting the I's, crossing the T, having a lot of precision in order. A bit like the driver, they do focus on facts and figures rather than emotions in their decisions, but like the planner, they will take in their environment, consider what they're going to do, and they won't take action until they are sure that they have dotted every I and crossed every T. So in this next section that I'm going to go on, I'm going to try and give you some quick tips on the do's of dealing with each of those four key styles, the don'ts of dealing with them, and then I'll give you some questions which will explore their strengths and perhaps some of their development areas as well. I would stress here though that these questions are generic, and I'm only going to give you 2 or 3 for each style. What I suggest you do is, consider how the individual matches your job behaviourally, and then develop questions that will explore those areas where they match and those areas where there could be some development. And those will obviously change depending on the style of the behaviour and also the requirements of the role. So dealing with the driver, well, the do's, because they're all about power, allow them to come to some of their own conclusions in your conversations. Don't direct them as to what the answer is. Let them come to their conclusions. Always be business-like and focus on the results. They're not one for small talk. They do prefer to go straight to the results. So, not necessarily a lot of need for you to make them feel at ease at the beginning of an interview. You can get straight on with the interview. In fact, they would like you to. Concentrate on the facts, not the feelings, and look for them in return during an interview to be focusing on the facts rather than the feelings. If a role requires them to be very much supporting and looking after people, you need to explore whether they're going to be comfortable doing that, bearing in mind that they may not be a pure driver. They may have traits, I, S or C in their profile as well. And always be prepared to negotiate. The driver's out to win, remember, so when it comes down to time to negotiate contracts, etc., they're going to keep coming back and looking for more and trying to feel that they've come out with a win on their behalf. What not to do, don't take too much time. As I said, get straight to the point. Don't take too much time in the interview. Get in there, use your time quickly. Don't go over the top on detail. They're not a big fan of detail. That is, of course, an area you may wish to explore in the interview because they don't like detail. And so if you're in a role where they're going to be expected to handle a lot of detail, you may want to explore that further. They don't like to be bound by procedures either. So you need to explore those areas if it's a big issue for you that procedures be followed. That said, a pure D and a pure C often will find those manufacturing type of roles where it's important to get things done, but also to get a quality result. And then last, don't tell them what to do or overly direct their actions. Remember, they like to be in charge. That said, if they feel that the person interviewing them is clearly the overall boss and the person who has the power in that organisation, the CEO, etc., then they will bow, for want of a better word, to their authority. So I've got sales strategy there. I guess what I'm thinking of here is if you're going to sell them your role and get them to want to take your role, you really need to show them, well, what is the advantage of taking the role? What does your organisation offer them that is going to enhance their position, their power, and help them achieve their personal goals? So let's give you a few questions to explore some strengths. So you might say something like, well, what are your personal ambitions in life? What steps have you taken to achieve them? Because the driver is very clear on what their ambitions are, you can expect them that they will have definite steps laid out towards achieving their goals. You might also ask them to give an example of what a goal they've achieved despite the odds being against them. Because a driver is very focused, failure is one of their big fears. They tend to do what it takes to achieve a goal. And so if they're limited by rules or diplomacy or tact, remember they will often do what it takes to get from A to B in the quickest way possible and efficiently. And if that means breaking a few rules and upsetting a few people, they've been known to do so. You also might want to ask them, if they've been in a situation where somebody has needed to take charge, and what did they do? You'll tend to find, as I said, because they're all about power, you'll find a D that if they're in a situation where they don't feel anybody is immediately taking charge, or even if there is someone taking charge that person isn't as powerful or qualified to as them, they will tend to take over. So if you're looking for someone to really take responsibility, take control of the situation, then the driver is what you're looking for. But obviously, if you need someone that needs to have a little bit of tact and allow others to take charge and then just to steer it, you may want to ask these questions to explore if that's going to be an issue for you. I always look at it that someone's strengths are also their biggest limitations. So these questions I'm giving you for their development areas and for their strengths may in fact be the other way around in your type of role. So looking at the driver's development areas, have you ever worked in a team situation? What was your experience of it? Because the driver's focus is very much on personal success rather than teamwork, You can find that sometimes they're not great team players, and you need to consider whether that is a challenge for your environment. Asking them to give examples of when they haven't achieved a result and why it was and what they did about it. You may find that when a driver doesn't achieve a goal, they'll often feel that it's others are at fault and not themselves. Sometimes they're not great at analysing, self-reflection on things they could have done better. So you may want to explore that. And then, have you had to deal with difficult people? How did you resolve the situation? Because a driver focuses on outcomes and not feelings, they can come across as quite rude or uncaring. So if diplomacy, tact, motivating people, thinking about feelings is important to you, you may want to explore that with the driver. Okay, communicator, high communicator. What are some of the things we should do and don't with them? Well, sharing opinions and talking through ideas. They're all about people, remember. So the opening of an interview, generally you're best to spend a bit of time getting to know them, allowing them to get to know you, focus, a bit of chit-chat up front, they'll quite enjoy that. But be aware they'll chit-chat all day if you allow them to, so don't forget to focus on what you want to get from them. Focus on how they feel about an issue. Remember, they make their decisions based on emotions and feelings as opposed to facts and figures. Acknowledge their contributions to ideas and what they've done. They like recognition, so giving their recognitions for their achievements is always a good way to win them over. At the same time, it can be a weakness of theirs, so it's an area to explore to see if they're so focused on how wonderful they are that they don't see some of their limitations. And focus on building a relationship with them. If you want to win them over to your organisation, they're going to want to work somewhere where they feel they've got a personal relationship. They like to work with managers that they feel they have a one-on-one, friendly, collegiate relationship rather than someone that dictates to them. With that in mind, the don'ts will don't present the facts at the expense of feelings and fun. They're going to want to work somewhere where they feel there is a bit of enjoyment, bit of lots of collegiate activities going on, and don't risk causing rejection. If they feel that you're rejecting them in any way, then they can quickly turn. If they're the right person for you, you risk losing them. Don't put them in a position where they feel they may lose respect. So if you find that they're struggling with an answer or a question, try not to probe it further too far, because if they find themselves trapped in a corner, a bit like the caged lion, they'll tend to attack and bite rather than lose face. And then try not to overly express disagreement or disapproval. Obviously, challenge their answers, probe to make sure that they do know what they're talking about. But again, if they feel that you disapprove or you're in disagreement, they will quickly move to a position where they're feeling this role is not for them. So again, taken as a sales strategy, if you want the person to like your role, you've really got to show that you've got building a friendly relationship, and how being in this role is going to enhance their reputation and make them more popular with others, and try and avoid too much antagonism or undue pressure on them during the interview process. So questions, well, exploring some strengths. How would you describe your relationship with colleagues in your previous role? You can expect a communicator would have developed positive relationships. Where they haven't, you can expect that may be a part of why they're looking for a new role in the first place. So explore those relationships, and any signs of why they didn't get on with someone, you might want to explore why and see if that's got something to do with their leaving the role. Can you give an example of how you go about influence people to your way of thinking? Well, in essence, a communicator, that's what their key strength is. It's influencing people, hence the name influence. So they're welcome giving examples of what they have done. When you find yourself somewhere you don't know anybody, what do you do? Well, a communicator is highly comfortable going into a room full of people they've never met and quickly building a network of people around them. So, if that's important to you, that's a skill set that you would be looking for, and their strengths that certainly they will be happy to talk to you about. Some areas for development on the reverse side of that coin. Have you ever failed in a sales or negotiation because you talked too much? And what did you do about it? Communicator will often find it hard not to oversell, and have been known to talk themselves out of a sale with the less expressive type of person. So here you're checking to see if they recognise that possibly they have done that, and then you're looking to see how they dealt with that rejection, because someone saying no to them can feel like a rejection to them, so they may not go back and try again. And as we all know, in a sales or negotiation situation, a no isn't a full stop. A no is we haven't got there yet, which we still need to tweak. Next one, are there any types of people you don't get along with, and why is this? Generally, a communicator will get along with people as long as they don't reject them. So again, be looking for situations of how they've dealt with people that have rejected them. If they give you lots of examples where it's the other person's fault rather than theirs that they didn't get along, that you may need to explore that. You may want to consider that in your decision-making process. Have you been in a situation where the facts required you to deliver bad news? What did you do? Well, the communicator is all about feelings and not facts. They also want people to like them, so they may resist being the person that brings bad tidings, because that may mean that they're not liked. So in a situation where your role will require them to be the bringer of bad news, you may need to consider that. Again, always bear in mind the other factors of their DISC profile. So, if they've got a high I, but they've also got quite a high D, and they're bringing bad news because they need to do that in order to achieve the goal, well, the D may overcome the I in that, and they'll be able to achieve that sort of thing. So, as I said, this isn't one-dimensional, and I'm being somewhat one-dimensional in my approach today. The planner, high S. Well, first thing to remember there is that they are about, like the high I or the communicator, they are about people. So use questions, probe for feedback, and listen. They do tend to. They are more receptive, so they will want to consider their answers and give you a considered answer. And so asking them several questions to expand upon their answer will be important. You need to show genuine interest in their responses, make them feel at ease and comfortable, and that you're respecting their approach, providing them with support and suggestions. And being ready to offer guarantees. In a role situation, remember, they're all about security, so they're going to want to feel that they're going into a role that offers a secure future, and they'll want to understand the historical precedent behind taking that role. So what have others done? Who else is in the team? Show me how this isn't, this is a positive and secure move for me. What you don't want to do is move forward too quickly. Allow them the time to answer your questions fully. As I said, ask them questions, allow them to come forward, and don't force, don't expect quick answers from them. Give them a chance to think about the way they want to respond. And don't create uncertainty or insecurity. As I said, this is something where they need to feel comfortable in what they're doing, and because they, for example, in situations where you're doing group interviews and activities, they're not going to feel the most comfortable in that situation, unless, of course, they're doing something that they do day in, day out in their current role. So try not to put them in too much of a position where they feel uncertain of what they've got to do and what's expected of them and when it's expected of them. So again, looking at it that you're trying to sell them the role in your organisation, you need to show support and commitment and reassurance that taking this role is going to actually offer them greater security, and is not going to be a massive, complete overhaul and complete change. And it's of benefit for them and their family for them to take this role. So, planner, looking at strengths. Would you describe yourself as a loyal person? Well, a planner is generally very loyal, which is something to bear in mind in interview. Why are they with you? Why have they come to the interview? Is it a logical career progression for them to be looking at your role, or is there an underlying factor in their current organisation that they've decided to move? Because moving is quite a big step for them. What would you say are the most important aspects of a business relationship? Well, you can expect them to focus on the personal side of relationships and the teamwork and the support and that side of things. How would you say you work with other people on a social level? Well, planners are very socially orientated towards positive interactions with other people. Whilst it may take them a little while to get to know and to trust new team members, once they have, they become friends for life and they're very important to them. So having a strategy for onboarding and introducing planners into your organisation is very important. And also introducing new members to a team full of planners, making sure you do that properly. Next one, have you worked behind the scenes to help someone? Well, you can expect that a planner will. They're very thoughtful and supportive, and you will often find them in a role where they are providing support. So if that's the type of role that you're looking for, then the planner could well be the person you're looking for. Samples for development areas. Well, when was the last time you worked towards a tight deadline and did you achieve it? Planner tends to have a more steady approach, hence the steadiness in the DISC term. They're very measured in their pace and they don't necessarily respond well to tight deadlines. They plan their time, they know what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and they schedule it through. So when there's a lot of change to deadlines or pressure put on deadlines, they can feel uncomfortable with that. Describe a time of great change at work. How did you handle it? Well, again, a planner doesn't cope well with upheaval. They prefer to maintain the status quo and to, if they found a way of doing things that works, they prefer to keep doing it in the same way rather than changing, because that can be stressful for them. Whenever you worked independently in charge of a project and completed it successfully, how did you do that? Because a planner prefers to work in a support and team environment, they may not like working on their own individually towards goals and deadlines. So explore that, because if it is a type of role where they will be very much independent, it may not necessarily be one that suits them the most. So moving on to the analyst, our high Cs, the last of the four we're looking at today. The do's, well, provide them with material in writing. In all areas, they will want to see the contract, they will read the contract, they will want a position description, they will read the position description, they will want to know the processes and the organisational structure, etc. So it may be in your interest actually to provide all of that before the interview to allow them time to consider the role and to ask questions. If you provide it after the first interview at a point where you'd like to take things a little bit further, you can expect that they will actually read it all and come back with questions. You do need to provide them with proof of facts and evidence for things. So, they're not likely to believe the sales pitch when you tell them what a wonderful team environment you have and how they can earn bonuses. They're going to want to see the proof that bonuses have actually been earned and are achievable and that it is a collegiate environment. Look at the advantages and the disadvantages. They are rational thinkers, logical and precise, so they will look at both sides of the arguments and they will be wanting you to point those out. A sales pitch where it's all positive, all the good things about the role, they are also wanting to know what are some of the downsides. Adopt a systematic approach, so they do appreciate a structured interview type. Again, they're not overly focused on people, so there's not a lot of need for chit-chat at the beginning. They'd much rather you got straight into the detail and focused in on the what's, where's and why-fors of the role and the interview. Don't leave out facts and details, obviously, if they're looking for a lot of facts, and make sure you've got that documentation to hand. Don't be vague or show uncertainty. If they're looking for you to know what you're talking about, they pride themselves on their knowledge of their particular area, and they'll be expecting you to know these things as well. That said, if you don't know, the best thing to do is to admit that you're not sure, and if you can't provide them with the answer there and then from someone that does, then promise to get back to them and make sure that you do get back to them with the answer. And lastly, don't make assumptions without verifying facts with them. It's important that facts, everything is verified and everything is on the table for them to make a decision. So I guess, again, proof is the strategy here. Make sure you show them exactly what it is that makes this role a good move for them and eliminate any risk involved in coming to your organisation. Sample questions for an analyst. Well, some of the strengths you might want to explore are: can you describe a time when you've acted rashly or without precedent and later regretted it? The reason being is that they probably haven't. Because they have quite a patient and passive approach, they will rarely act off the cuff. They will always want to have a precedent before they will act. Obviously, this is a strength of theirs, unless it happens to be a role where there is no precedent and you just want them to get out and do it without any rules, because that's not likely to suit the analyst. Whenever you work in a situation where there's no guidelines, what did you do? Well, basically, an analyst likes to work in a structured way with clear rules, and often where there is no rule book, they're likely to create one. So if this is a role where there isn't a rule book, but you'd like there to be upfront with them about that. Don't pretend there are rules in place when there aren't, because they'll feel uncomfortable about that when they come on board, and it's not the best way to start off with them. Can you describe a time when you've had to deal with a difficult person? How did you deal with them? Well, an analyst is usually very diplomatic in their dealings, and because they don't like conflict, they'll find a way to deal with people in a fairly diplomatic way. So you can expect that they're unlikely to have got into head-to-head conflict with difficult people, and they will have found a diplomatic way to solve the problem. And looking at development areas, well, can you think of a time where an opportunity passed you by? What did you do? Because an analyst is more passive in their approach, and they like to dot every I, cross every T, they may not react in time to grasp opportunities as they arise. So if this is important to you, that is an area of limitation to them, and you may want to explore situations to see if they can give you an example where they have managed to grasp opportunities. Have there been times when you have not had enough information to finish a project? What was the outcome? Well, because an analyst seeks all the details, they can become stuck if they feel they do not have enough information or the information that they need. So this can be a challenge for you. An analyst in technical sales roles, for example, will always want a lot of product information. They'll always want a lot of product training before they'll actually get out there and sell for you. And when have you ever dealt with an emotional co-worker? How did you deal with them? Because an analyst deals on facts a little bit like the driver does, although they're not the assertive person that the driver is, they may be uncomfortable in such situations. So if you're going to be putting an analyst in a team full of communicators, for example, or even planners who do tend to focus on feelings, you need to make sure that they're going to be able to cope in situations where people are focusing just on feelings rather than facts, or will they take the conversation back to facts and completely disregard feelings? So that was a very quick introduction. I hope you found it of use. Half an hour fly past very quickly. So look, I'm sure you've got more questions, and I would welcome you contacting me on any of the methods you can see in front of you now. Thank you for your time and interest today, and I hope that we'll be able to talk about DISC in the very near future. Thank you very much. Goodbye.